Welcome back to another episode of the We Get to Do This podcast. We got to have an awesome conversation with Tim Borowski of Axon Movement.
This is one where we got to dive very deep, specifically into stress and the nervous system. And if you are listening, there's a fun little take-home assignment that has to do with what Tim called free flow journaling in the episode. So make sure to give that a try, and you're gonna love this. Like I said, it's very deep, not surface level at all things stress in the nervous system and how we can stay healthy in that realm. Tim, thank you so much for being on, but also thank you so much for being a mentor to me. I've known Tim for 5+ years, and he has played a huge role in my business, as well as in helping me grow my business and understanding myself as a human. And it's been really cool to kind of have him as a mentor figure over the past 5 years and get to know him better. And I'm really excited about the relationship we're going to have in the future as well. And hopefully we'll have him back on at some point.
And it was also fun talking about a blend of Chinese medicine with AK and just all of the medicine paradigms kind of colliding and how they each play a role in helping patients and humans. So we're excited for you to listen to this one. Please share this episode if you found it helpful, and rate and follow our We Get to Do This podcast. We appreciate it and enjoy this one.
Thanks, y'all.
This is another super cool full circle moment for myself. Tim Borowski, welcome to the podcast. Man, this is really cool. You were probably like the third or fourth, like really big mentor figure for sure in the industry in my life. What, 5 years ago now? I probably met you for the first time at Raw, probably.
Gotta be.
Man, like you and Todd specifically showed me that if you work hard and you learn a lot, you can be successful. And it seems like a simple idea, right? But I really feel like I modeled a lot of what I am doing, or what I was doing, and and doing now too, after you two specifically. And it's been insane what not this is about me, but what my career has become. And you are a huge role in that. So thank you for that. Thank you for being here. And I know you've impacted a lot of lives, and we're going to probably touch on a bunch of different things, but yeah, I'm just super stoked you're here. We always start every episode by asking our guests, who are you? What do you do? And why do you do it? So Tim, who are you? What do you do? And why do you do it?
Well, first of all, thank you to both of you for having me on here. And thank you for the kind words, Jacob. That's humbling. And also, just on that note, before I get into me, it's been very rewarding for me to see where you've come from, where we met as well, because that was kind of the first somewhat of a reflection of being able to see myself in my younger years and where that goes. So thank you for that. Yeah, my name is Timothy Borowski. I'm a wellness entrepreneur and myokinesthetic practitioner. I'm the owner and founder of Axon Movement, located in Edina, Minnesota. And what was question 3? Who am I? What do I do?
What do you do?
And why do I do it? I feel that my life is, very purpose driven. And I feel like my purpose and for being here is to help unlock stuck patterns in other humans as well as myself. So I have a passion for getting the most out of this life experience as possible. And I've been on a fairly relentless pursuit of that for as long as I can remember. And I do this to help unlock others' potential, whether that is in their mind, in their perspective on life, or in their physical body as well.
Yeah. Can you give an example of either your ideal client, someone you love working with, or maybe someone you worked with like this week or this month that really lit you up, give you a lot of energy?
Yeah. So my ideal clients, I always tell people I like to unlock what is stuck. And so my ideal client is somebody who has done a lot of various modalities. A lot of my clients have kind of been through a lot of the traditional model, a lot of the functional medicine model, and they're still finding this piece that's sticking, whether it's a repetitive pattern, that could be a pain pattern, it could be a health symptom or progression of symptoms, and they feel like I'm out of answers. Nothing seems to be breaking this pattern. That's my favorite type of case. And that's where a lot of my clients start with me and add an Axon. And I'm not doing anything exceptional. I'm just using a variety of other methods that I've been very fortunate to have been introduced to and pursued those and kind of put them into my own methodology. And it seems to be helping a lot. A case this week that really lit me up. It lit me up in kind of a different way. It was a very heavy case. It was a young gentleman who actually had a spinal cord injury from a carjacking incident, actually was shot, and in the process of getting away, collided with had a car accident. And so, he hasn't lost function in the lower body, but there's obviously some neurological inhibition going on. And what was so rewarding about this case was, he's been, he's on a dozen medications. He's working with top level neurological rehab PT. And he came in to see me because the nerve pain in his arms is just, nothing's touching it. And we got through about 15 minutes of our first session, and he was kind of like looking down at his hands and moving his fingers around. I said, "What are you noticing?" He's like, "The pain has shifted drastically." And this was, the second we finished our neurological therapy. And for the first time in months, something has been touching that pattern. So kind of like what I was talking about a minute ago, like this is stuck. He's getting, all the care, and he's still living with this pattern. And, this is a brand new case. Who knows where it's going to go? But that one really lit me up because, again, it was just a reminder that's like, man, like there are answers and solutions sometimes, even when you're told there aren't.
Wow. I mean, in that specific case, is that your myokinesthetic arm? Is that your AK arm? Is that, an arm, because I imagine you kind of as a wizard that has gathered a bunch of different resources over the past 15 years. And you have, just this orb of knowledge that you like, right? But in that situation, the gentleman that had the nerve stuff going on, was that like specifically nerve related that you spent the most time on, or were you doing other things too?
This was immediately after our myokinesthetic therapy. So I'm happy to break myokinesthetics down. It's a neurological activation and repatterning methodology. So it's a hands-on neuromuscular therapy, and it's all about re-educating the firing sequence in the nervous system and facilitating specific peripheral nerves, making sure they're doing what they're supposed to do. And again, we can break that down as far as you want, but this specific example in case, we had just started with the myokinesthetics. It takes about 15 minutes. We did a big cervical nerve 6 treatment. And yeah, it was immediately after we finished that, about 15 minutes in, and he was already feeling it take effect. So now the case in general, myokinesthetics is just one of the tools that we're integrating. We're also doing a lot of natural medicine, functional medicine stuff, technologies, PEMF as well. So it's one of the tools in the case, but it was that example that I just shared was only the myokinesthetics by that point.
Where did you actually was there a specific experience that you had, or how did you even find this path to doing this? I know you said for as long as you remember, you've, had this, you wanted to do this, but was there a moment? Do you know somebody else that does your path?
Great question. This is kind of a semi-long story, but it's very much, I've always been open to, if an opportunity or a path presents itself, go at it, explore it with all you got and see what happens. And, that sometimes will take you this way, and then you think you're going over here and it'll take you that way. I really, it was a godsend to get introduced, especially to the myokinesthetics. Now rewind a decade or two. So I actually grew up in a medical family. My dad is a medical doctor. That was the paradigm that I understood to a certain age. I was introduced to chiropractic when I was 16 years old. I was playing football as a tight end and a defensive end, and I developed such bad back pain that I couldn't get down or up from my stance. And I had been going to PT for a while for it, wasn't really getting anywhere. And, I'm wired to ask why about everything. My answers, it seemed like, were always like overuse. And I was like, okay, I get that, but why am I overusing my back and my 11 other teammates that are the same age aren't, right? And so I went to see a chiropractor for the first time, kind of the stereotypical chiropractic success story, got the adjustment, got off the table, about 80% pain increase right away within 2 days, 100% pain-free. So I went in for my follow-up and I was like, man, this is a miracle. What happened? And my chiropractor sat me down with the model spine and pelvis. He's like, it was actually your SI joint that was stuck and locked. And because your hip and your pelvis were not moving the way they should, you were actually compensating into your low back. And he's like, I hardly touched your back. It was your SI joint that was stuck, and freeing that up, through that compensation relieved your symptoms. And at that moment, it was like all the lights went off, and I was like, this is what I want to do. So from age 16 to 26, I started pursuing chiropractic. Now, I didn't realize it at the time, but about 9 years after that, I ended up marrying that chiropractor's daughter. So my father-in-law is the mentor that kind of introduced me to more of the alternative natural medicine realm. And so, yeah, I got to the point where I was 2 years into chiropractic school, and I kind of went full circle in school. I entered as more of like wanting to be more like physiotherapy, sports chiropractor, got introduced to chiropractic philosophy and went really deep on that. And then I was introduced to applied kinesiology and functional medicine while I was in school. And at that point, I was like, you know what, this really resonates with me more than anything, because it's taking into account the entire human being, not so much just the structure or just the nervous system, but all the other facets of the human being. And so I started spending all my time and energy pursuing functional medicine and AK, which aren't taught in the formal chiropractic curriculum. And the more exposure I got to the techniques and fields, the more I was kind of on the fence about if I wanted to pursue chiropractic long-term or not. And as I increased my exposure, met some mentors, Todd being one of them, and other pros that weren't chiropractors, but had very successful careers in kind of the AK functional medicine realm. And there's a lot of other details in here, but about, again, 2 years in, I was like, you know what, I'm feeling strongly like I need to just press pause on this, which again was kind of radical at the time for me, because I was poised to graduate and step right into my father-in-law's successful practice in our hometown, really busy practice. And at the time, it was never spoken outright, but the dynamic was like I was kind of poised to take over. Maybe that was part of his exit strategy. And my wife, Hannah, and I were like, I'm like a year and a half away from graduating. Neither of us wanted to move back to our hometown. And I absolutely love my father-in-law, but I didn't really want to mix family and business on that level. So I took the leap of faith. I pressed pause, and I was like, I don't really know where I'm going to go with this. I'd like to see where I can take it, but I'm just going to take a break. So I did. And I was like, up to this point, I had worked in a restaurant through undergrad and grad school for 9 years. I was like, I'm just going to pick up a restaurant gig to get some cash flow going while I look to build out this career. And I could not get a job even at a restaurant. And it was crazy. It was like I got turned away at the door at one place. Another place I had a great interview, and they're like, come in on Monday. They ghosted me. And so I was like, man, like, the intensity of that, right? Like I'd been pursuing this for so long and then stepped away. Anyway, that led me to keep looking for jobs. So I pulled up Indeed one day, and right away there it was like functional medicine and applied kinesiology clinic looking for a therapy technician. And I was like, there's no way those two words are right there put together. So I applied, got hired on the spot with a naturopath in Burnsville, Dr. Stephen Irestone, who, speaking of wizards, right? He's like an old school AK guy, brilliant. And I didn't realize this at the time, but he had recently been introduced to myokinesthetics and was like, this is incredible. I want to bring this into my practice, but I don't have the time and capacity to go learn it. And he was looking for somebody to come in as an intern that had the capacity to learn it. So perfect time and perfect place for me. And so, yeah, he introduced me to the myokinesthetics, and I worked for him. So, he was throwing all his most complex cases my way to see what we could do. And pretty quickly into that, I was like, oh my goodness, like, this is incredible. I was seeing pelvic pain that had ablation surgeries, and fingers that were stuck for 15 years that started to move, and just all of this was going on. And I'm like brand new to this. I don't really know what I'm doing. And I'm like, this is absolutely incredible, and nobody knows about it. So spent a couple of years really refining the craft, learning the methods, doing that work. And then again, kind of like perfect time, perfect place, pandemic situation. As soon as I was competent and had learned the methods, the clinic downsized and let go of most of their staff. And then I was kind of forced out onto my own, which in the business world was a big leap for me. So yeah, that's kind of how I got where I got. I don't know if that satisfies the questions or not, but.
Have you ever read the book Outliers by Malcolm Gladwell? You've for sure read that book.
I have. Now you got to remind me a little bit about it. I definitely have.
He basically like talks about like how a lot of outliers have a story in which I'm going to compare it to yours, where they have these specific moments that are like, you hear them talk about it and you're like, how did that happen? Like for example, for you to look on Indeed at the right time, whatever, see the exact naturopath mixed with myokinetic, whatever the mix was, and be like, those exist? That's insane. Right. It makes me think of my story where I was looking for a personal training job, something like that. And I loved running, and I stumbled across a performance running gym looking for a personal trainer specific to runners. And I was like, I didn't even know that existed. And I was like, that sounds cool. Right. But then, fast forward for you in that story, when you're literally in a situation where the guy, like your boss at the clinic says, hey, I will pay you to be my intern to go learn this craft. Like that doesn't, that's a very good right place, right time. But then you also to have the awareness then and be like, that is so lucky. I am going to capitalize the heck out of that. Right. So the book, he talks about like Bill Gates being the only dude that had access to a computer at the moment in time that he had access to a computer, and just things like that. And your story just made me think of that book. And I was like, the amount of things that you've done that you've been able to have the awareness to go, I need to capitalize on that is crazy. And I remember every time we talk about entrepreneurship, I feel like this comes up. And being the daughter of that chiropractor, I've heard that story like I think 3 or 4 times now. Every time you tell me that, I kind of forget about it, and then I have like a whoa moment every time.
Yeah, it is kind of wild, isn't it? And like I used to always joke with Hannah, I'm like, this is just a business move, right? Like, I'm trying to get I'm trying to lock this down. She's like, shut up. But yeah, it is kind of wild. And sometimes I have that moment too, where I'm now like, my dad's a medical doctor and my father-in-law is a chiropractor, and I'm kind of like right in the middle, which is a perfect representation of where I feel like I fall in the field too. I'm just I want to try to bridge the gap as much as we can.
Well, we'd be lying to ourselves if there weren't sometimes butting heads in the industry of health and wellness. So I got to ask, is there ever like conflict between like your background and like the Western background of like your dad, for example?
I get that question all the time. Yeah. I'm sure he does too. We have a great relationship, and he's been very supportive of me all the way through. There are definitely some things that he's very interested in and curious about, especially more of the physiotherapy, the neurological rehab, things like that. And there are certain techniques and methods that I use that we just don't talk about.
That's a great answer.
No. But yeah, no, there's good relationship, strong respect both ways. But yeah, we have our difference in philosophies and things like that. But no, we get along really well. He's great.
Well, I feel like you talk about evidence-based research and why you do things a lot too. And I feel like that's such a big part of the Western world is evidence-based. So I'm sure that probably helps things too,
Yeah, it does. And that's again, those are the parts of the Venn diagram that maybe we talk about more. And then, and I am evident. I love science. I love research. I love evidence-based, but that sometimes I've found can be an inhibiting factor to utilizing certain methods or techniques that are actually helping and working in ways that others aren't, even if they don't yet have that stamp of approval, right? And so that's where, I let that in, I share that with my clients too, is like, if I've found that it's working and it's helping people personally, I'm going to integrate it and use it. And if it's a strange technique and it's using an electrical current and it's telling me that there's stress in the nervous system from a male in the past, like I don't know how or why. It's weird, but I've seen it enough. I've seen the data enough. And sometimes those insights are the invaluable piece that can help you, get where you want to get.
Plus, I can't tell you the amount of people I've heard on podcasts or met in real life that claim to be exclusively evidence science based and then conveniently like to just ignore that fact and use methods that they've, discovered and whatnot at the same time too. So, but without getting too down that hole, I should probably
I think we
change.
should go down. We should take a step down that hole. I think this is an interesting subject because I have one foot on both sides of the story, right? Like you definitely don't want to be pursuing and doing things that really are just like nothing objective to it. My question for a lot of this is like every single human being is unique and individual. And because I'm so interested in the nervous system, life experience, perception, right? Perception of reality. Here we're going a little deep, but like perception of reality gets filtered differently case to case, person to person. And there are certain things that are impossible to get the exact same objective measure across the board because every single participant is going to have a different response to that, even if it's at a deeper, like subconscious neurological level. So that's sometimes my pushback when it's like, well, where's the evidence for this? Is like, one, maybe it hasn't been done, and two, how can we map and that perception in the nervous system, it's changing in real time. It's like moment to moment, thought to thought. It's like, so no two cases are alike, and that's a big part of how I like to practice too, is trying to be like, okay, individually, this person, this nervous system, this life experience, what is it that this person wants, rather than saying, well, that's not what this study says, so we're not even going to explore that.
And even like provider to provider. I mean, as an acupuncturist, the treatment I could be giving the exact same treatment as another acupuncturist, and we could have completely different responses from the different patients or even the same patient. And like you said, it's like the perception piece. And sometimes it's just very hard to do the exact same thing, like from person to person, and expect like the same results. Like you said, we're all individual, and it's going to change from person to person. Like every human contact is going to be different.
That's an incredible point too. Also, yes, the interaction and the engagement between the provider is huge, right? Excellent. That's a great point.
Can you get into a little bit? So I know your practice focuses a lot on, like you said, removing blockages and stressors, like things that are getting stuck. What does that is a stressor to you? Like, what does that even mean? And then how do you get that unstuck? And how do you find out like the specific stressors for specific people?
Yeah. So stressors is kind of a umbrella term in my world, I guess. And so stressors could be anything that interferes with or interrupts with standard physiological function. So a stressor could be a toxic heavy metal. A stressor could be, in my paradigm, a pathogen of some sort, a parasite, bacteria, virus. A stressor could be a nutrient imbalance. It could be poor food choices, right? Stressed organ systems, and stressors can definitely be in the mind and in the psyche. So I'd say a stressor is anything that is interfering with baseline standard physiological function. And so the trick is, how do you identify where those are, which system are they interfering with, and what might downstream from that glitch in that system because of that stressor? What are some of the known mapped out downstream effects? What are the symptoms? What are the signs that commonly correlate with that? And then really working backwards to figure out, okay, what can we do about this to try to remove the stress, again, with the belief that if we remove the stress from the mechanism or the physiological function, the idea or belief is that the body does trend towards healing and regeneration for the most part. That if we remove the stress, the system will do what it's supposed to do, and then symptoms will start to go down. And with enough symptoms removed, then we start to see like a resolution to a case or a diagnosis, right? How you identify what those are, I guess that's the wizardry, right? And that's many different assessment tools and ways to go about that. Now I forget, Kaylee, are you an AK person too, a kinesiology person too, or not really?
Not
yet.
Not yet. I love it. So yeah, that's where I'd say the assessment strategies and diagnostic tools would come into play. For me, I'm big into bioresonance scanning, something called Bionetics, which is going to use technology in the form of physics, like neurofeedback scans, biofeedback scans, integrating scans on DNA samples, things like that, that can generate a massive amount of data that will identify some of those known stressors. Of course, a lot of people are using lab tests, other diagnostic tools, Chinese medicine, acupuncture. You have your own system for that, right? So we could go as specific as you want, but so yeah, stressor, anything that's interfering with standard function, and then how you identify that is different practitioner to practitioner. And then again, how do you address that? Again, that's the art or the artistry of all of the healing modalities.
Wizardry.
Would you agree? Do you
It really
find
is.
do you find do you have any examples or common stressors that you see among athletes? Maybe even endurance athletes if you have that answer. But like just yeah, athletes. Do you have any? You know what I'm saying?
Yeah. So again, I'm very much into the nervous system, so I'll always kind of like pull it back into that a little bit. Oftentimes we'll tell my clients I consider like the nervous system and the subconscious stress regulation as like the pinnacle of health, right? Because if the nervous system is kind of stuck in this stress loop, even if it's subconscious, that by way of the HPA, adrenals, thyroid, into the hormones, that's going to interfere with a lot of the physiological function. And so if the brain is up here and then it goes like to the hormones and out to the body, a lot of us are kind of like patching holes down here, but we have so much stress signaling going on up in the nervous system that until we get to some of that, to some extent, maybe patching holes. So more specific to like endurance athletes or any high level athlete in general, I think there is potentially a little overdrive going on in the nervous system where we're maybe redlining a little bit more frequently than, I don't want to say should, but then the body is. So depletion, right? Like depleting energy, depleting minerals, potential hormone imbalances, things like that. But it's such a tough question because, running is therapeutic too. So exercise is therapeutic also. So I think, again, it's case to case individual where it's like, what is the highest cumulative gain in terms of health for that individual? And if somebody, and again, I know I'm kind of talking in esoteric language here, but in the nervous system, if somebody's thoughts are going to absolutely spiral and cause all this stress on the rest of the body, and you can mitigate that by running, jiu-jitsu, right? I think the cumulative gain is better to have that short-term acute stress of the 20-mile run to calm the system enough to keep you baseline rather than spiraling in your thoughts for 2 weeks. But bringing it back to a more like tangible level, I'd say lots of like mineral depletions, hormone imbalances, nervous system maybe being a little bit more in that high tone state a little longer than in the state where it's like regenerate, repair, rebuild.
What do you mean by mineral imbalances? Can you give me a example
Yeah,
of that?
mineral bands, some of the most common are going to be common electrolytes, sodium, potassium, calcium, magnesium, chloride, things like that. And then there's a whole slew of different trace minerals that have a very specific role and function in the body. And minerals and enzymes are extremely important for cellular energy. And so again, the human system, it all comes down to energy. Like if you're depleted on energy, the system's not going to have the juice to do what it wants to do, let alone get into the heal, regenerate phase. And so cellular energy especially is very dependent on electrolytes, minerals, vitamins, enzymes, things like that. So yeah, there's a ton of minerals, and actually balancing minerals can be extremely profound. It's very specific too. If you find the right mineral at the right time and place, it can shift the whole physiology.
Gotcha. Yeah, because I find the reason I was asking is because I feel like for me, so much of the time it comes back to adrenals on individuals, and I constantly am having to struggle with this of like, am I doing something wrong, or is it actually like adrenal related so much of the time? But so many of the people, everyone that I'm testing and working on is an endurance athlete that is revved up as heck. So I get the occasional stomach. I do get an occasional stomach, some kind of digestion distress going on. But so I was curious if the patterns you had found.
Have you been able to find any patterns of what that is in the stomach with your cases?
Well, usually it'll go towards HCl. Usually
That's
like
what
a
I
low
was going to
stomach
ask.
acid situation. Yeah.
So
And I've had that like in practice. I think I've only had that happen twice.
Mm.
But I
And
also don't as much as, you are either. So
that was
yeah.
kind of what I was talking up in the nervous system level. And so, yeah, low HCl, low depleted stomach acid, adrenal overdrive or fatigue. When I was talking about the nervous system kind of being stuck in that like high tone state, those are great physiological examples of what might happen. And for anybody watching, HCl stomach acid, we do want it to be nice and strong and hot. It's important for breaking down macronutrients, proteins into amino acids, which rebuild the body and help with a lot of neurotransmitter function, and other things. Excuse me. But that is one of the first downstream physiological responses when the nervous system is in that state where it's like burning up a lot of fuel and protecting the body as stomach acid will be depleted. And then you think of all the downstream glitches that can happen from that, right? So depleted stomach acid, burning up minerals and nutrients, adrenal, thyroid hormones, either being too high, too low. So again, all that, not directly, but a lot of that is downstream from what is going on in the control center in the nervous system.
Because I feel like even physical tension, back pain, or people talking about like tight shoulders all the time. Even, I mean, from a Chinese medicine perspective too, it's like stress related, stagnation, chi stagnation. And it's not just like, oh, my muscles are tight, let me release the muscle. Like you have to look way further upstream.
Totally. Absolutely.
Are there any recommendations you have for someone listening to this podcast right now that, might be like, are there any like quick hitter, like stress checks, I guess, that people can do that are listening to the podcast right now to like see like right now, take a deep breath. What is causing like issues potentially in my life at all? Is that something people can do on their own?
Yeah. And this is a great subject because the whole nervous system regulation thing is super trendy right now. And like, but the question is like, what does that mean? What does it look like? How do I, and there's a million ways to do that. One of my favorite challenges or practices for people is to just start what's called free flow journaling. And, the challenge is set a clock, sit down. And if you want to, you can pick a subject to prompt if there's something that you feel like, I think this is stressing me out. You don't have to have a prompt, but sit down. And the challenge is just to register and write down every single thought that hits the brain. Don't edit any of it. Put it on paper. Do that consistently, and then look back over time and see if it's revealing a trend or a common thread. So it's a mindfulness practice and just listening to what's going on in here. Because what can happen too is especially if we're on like a sensitive subject, we will start to hit what I call resistance points in our journaling. And those resistance points are when the words, the thoughts, the things that you would never say, you don't want anybody else to know. I literally feel like killing this person. I've heard that before. And it's like, well, I would never actually murder somebody, but that was the thought that registered. And there was strong resistance to put it on paper. So free flow, whatever comes out, if you catch a resistance point, mark it, right? Because then when you look back over time, you might start to find a theme with where your resistance is. And that resistance is going to give you an inside look in some of the internal blocks, protections, filtering in the nervous system too. So maybe I'm going a little deep on that, but I'm a big advocate for writing and writing by hand. And then, because then again, you can document it, you can look back on it, you're creating your own data set that can reveal a lot. That's a little more of like a psychological psyche check-in rather than like a physiological, but that is one of
I found that super therapeutic with my patients too, that have like a ton of like stress, anxiety, depression, and just giving them journaling or a cat died and it's like, write a letter to your cat or like write about it. And like you said, it's the things that they might not be telling me or their spouse or whoever, but like putting it down on paper and I feel like that's like the mind connection too of like putting things out on paper can just be like so therapeutic.
100%. It's getting that chatter out. It's a form of expression, right? I refer to expression like a pressure valve in the nervous system, because if we hold it in, it just builds and holds. So it's expression. And neuroscience has mapped out and confirmed a lot of the writing by hand has a very strong neurological repatterning effect to it as well.
And I feel like a lot of times we're not even aware of those thought patterns until, like you said, just like day by day, just like writing that down and seeing those patterns. A lot of times people are like,
I didn't even know this was a thing. So it's like, how am I feeling? I feel like we don't, that's even one of my favorite touch points, like even just in appointments, like, how are you doing? Like, how did you feel this week? And a lot of times people won't have thought about that forever, you know?
And those are the programs and the filters that are driving a lot of our thoughts. And a lot of our thoughts they're not necessarily subconscious, but they're not on the front of our brain either. They're kind of riding in the background, right? Those thoughts stimulate emotions. Those emotions stimulate a neurological and stress response, which stimulate hormones, which mess with the organs, right? So sometimes the whole mindfulness stuff can start to seem a little bit woo-woo, but very profound and great point. I mean, we don't always recognize what are those default programs that are kind of, might be triggered by this or might have a faulty belief behind them or cause us from acting on something that we really want to do because we don't realize that there's a perceived sense of humiliation if we step out and do that. You know what I mean? And those are the programs and the patterns you're talking about that, sometimes can be revealed through writing and other things, right? Love it.
What about the connection with our thoughts and the rest of the body in the sense of if a specific organ is off and how it can potentially affect the way we're thinking? Or if I were to like eat a certain thing or drink a certain thing and now my mood is lower or higher, how does that all like play into each other?
Yeah, that is a good question. I think you could explain this through many different lenses. And I think, Kaylee, you'd probably have a different lens than myself and other people. Are you talking a little bit more like, because like neurotransmitters and gut and vagus nerve, gut brain connection, that's a little bit more of like a biochemical, physiological response. Like, I think everybody understands if our neurotransmitters fluctuate, that's going to change our mood or our thoughts. So that can be a very physiological response. We could talk about neuroinflammation, right? So if the brain gets inflamed, then that can change our thoughts, our mood. And that inflammation, again, we talked about stressors earlier, dietary choices, toxicity, things like that. You can go all the way into, Chinese medicine is a great example, or somatic ideology and things like that, where there's, the idea that certain organs can influence emotions and thought patterns. So I think it kind of depends on which lens you want to look through. Is there kind of a specific direction you want to dial in?
Which lens would you look through the most?
It depends. I mean, it depends on I guess the
person.
case and the individual.
Okay. What about like anxiety, or anxious thoughts, depression thoughts? Yeah. My mindset before. Yeah. Mindset stuff with I don't know. I guess that's kind of what I was thinking. I think I was thinking more of like the vagus nerve and you said biomechanics, the first lens you talked about specifically, but then you also, in the second example, you said something about inflammation in the actual brain too.
It's super tough because it's so multifaceted and I don't think it's just one. You know what I mean? Like you can have somebody that their perception or their perspective that's been built throughout their life experience, that's going to be one component to it, right? Like how do they perceive the world and their experience? Does that person also have neuroinflammation? And does that person also have neurotransmitter imbalance from gut dysfunction or liver stress or something like that? Does that person have a mineral balance so that the nerves are sputtering? And you know what I mean? Right. So that's again why I'm just like, I do my best to just dial into the specifics of what that specific case is. And then it's again, working backwards of like, okay, like, is it neuroinflammation? Is it gut imbalances in microbiome? What is their outlook on life? What is their history? And so I personally think there's so many different inputs that add up to the specific presentation of that individual case. So it's kind of hard for me to just be like, oh, well, it's this, well, it's that. I use tiny bits of Chinese medicine in my practice as well. And that's where, again, so like, help me out, Kaylee, if I butcher this, but like anger, frustration, rage, kind of that whole like liver, gallbladder, bile region. So if somebody's really like, I'm just dealing with all this anger, frustration, rage, well, there's an indicator for me to go check out what's going on with liver, gallbladder, bile. And sometimes, a lot of times it's like, boom, it kind of like shows you the path and leads you to the things that, again, not every assessment type will make those correlations, but it is also a known science in and of itself.
That makes sense. Yeah, I think I was like trying to ask. The liver is a good example. I was trying to ask if in that situation it could affect a mood, an organ could, like the somewhere else in the body could affect a mood that we were having, and then like kind of how that happens. Yeah, the liver is a great one. And whenever if I'm ever a little irritated or angered for a prolonged period of time, I might hear Kaylee say something along the lines of liver cheese stagnation.
Yeah,
I have it memorized at this
totally.
point. So I think that was where I was trying to go. I just wasn't sure of how to like necessarily even ask it.
I mean, it's like infinite, man. It's like, because you could get into like bioenergetics and quantum physics, and it's just like that's what's so fascinating about biology, the human being, life. It's like there's just so many different lenses you can look through, and each lens is gonna give you a different perspective. Oftentimes, there's that middle ground of the Venn diagram of all the different inputs. That's where that's where the money is in that sweet spot. Yeah, tons of ways you could look at that.
I think it's important too to remember that it's not necessarily like you're saying one causing the other thing. There could be a relationship that's affecting, there could be two different things affecting each other, right? Or multiple systems at play all affecting each other and kind of working together.
Yes.
So I think that's where like you two especially are very good at, again, looking at the whole system and figuring out, okay, that's taxed, that is taxed. You know, heart, adrenals, brain. I'm just blurting things out. Why are they all going? Why are they all taxed? And figuring out kind of why that is, right?
Totally. And that, we were talking a little bit more about like mind, psyche, thoughts, but that's the same in, in the physiological function, especially for what I do also is like, now this isn't a blanket term for all of conventional medicine, but a diagnosis, right? Like you have a box of signs and symptoms and, check, 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 check. You have all the signs and symptoms. Let's call it this disease. And yes, sometimes you can absolutely measure that and say, confirm it. But what I see a lot of times is people come in with a diagnosis and it's like, well, what, have they confirmed it with this? Well, no, they don't really know why it's here, but I have all the symptoms. So I have this diagnosis. And so the way I look at it is more so, okay, what again are those inputs or the stressors or the glitches in the system that are causing those symptoms? And if the headaches are caused by slow hormone detox, then let's work on that. Okay, the headaches are gone. Well, now the brain fog is caused by mineral imbalance. Address that. And now the brain fog is gone. And you slowly start to pick away these symptoms in the box. Well, go into a brand new provider and practitioner, you don't have all those symptoms. You don't have necessarily have the diagnosis. So again, that's not about every case, but kind of the same idea. It's what are all those different inputs or stressors or thoughts that are all going into causing the presentation or the manifestation of whatever it is the body's exhibiting, signs, symptoms, diagnosis, whatever.
Is there such thing as a balanced nervous system? Is that real? Like we all talk about balancing your nervous system and regulating your nervous system, right?
Yeah.
Is there this like nirvana of a balanced nervous system?
I'm trying to be careful that I don't speak in absolutes, but I would say off the tip of my tongue, a balanced nervous system would be a highly adaptable nervous system. Stress is not inherently bad. Stress can be good. A stress response is a good thing. We want a stress response. Now, we don't want to tip the scale too far one way or the other for too long. I think a system that has lost a lot of its capacity to adapt or bring us into that safe state is where maybe we'd call it like imbalanced if it's having a hard time adapting to its environment. I think I'm going to leave it at that. What are your thoughts? What are your thoughts on that? What do you think?
No, I like that a lot because,
Yeah.
We have yin and yang in Chinese medicine and there's, an infinite number of both. And you're never going to have like this perfect, the same amount of yin and the same amount of yang. There's like this tipping scale. And you saying about it being adaptable reminds me of that because as I run, I'm depleting my yang energy, like that fiery. I'm increasing the yang, depleting the yin, like the cooling mechanisms of my body. It doesn't mean that it's inherently bad that I'm doing that. It's just, can my body then adapt to then bring me back to more equal, or am I getting stuck in this like yin deficient state, like this inability to cool myself off, or am I getting stuck in this yang? And so I think that to me is the nirvana, is being able to, how do you adapt to these stressors? And what I see with my patients, one of my favorite things that they come back, like one of the best results that I see is, I'm not like, I don't feel like I'm, how do I say this? Like, I'm not as quick to anger, or I'm letting things roll off of me more. Things don't affect me so much. It's not that they're not feeling joy or they're not getting angry or stressed, but it's not completely derailing their entire life, because they're able to adapt to that and be like, okay, I can change. And yes, this thing is happening to me, but it's not the end of the world. And that's like that adaptation part of, maybe I'm not like, I never want people to just not feel anything, right? Like, that's not the goal, is to not have any stress. Like you said, we're always going to have these stressors, but none of them are inherently bad or inherently good.
And that reminds me of forgive me if this is like too deep of a thought, but brings me back to a question I've been wrestling with the last like couple of years now, is like, especially myself as a practitioner, like we're like hyper focused on like optimal, right? Like optimal physiology, optimal function, optimal everything. And it's like, sometimes a question is like, what is health? Like, what does that mean? You know what I mean? Because if ultimately you could go a million directions, but it's like, what is the state of your life experience? Like, are you sincerely content and enjoying life? And if you feel fulfilled, and that isn't necessarily dependent on the state of your physiology. Now that there's a huge correlation, but you know what I'm saying? It's like when have we done enough to regulate? When have we done enough to optimize the body that now we're like, we are healthy? You know what I'm saying? Because it's like, I don't know. Why do the 101-year-olds that are super happy smoke cigs and, do everything you're not supposed to do, right? But they're like, I love my life. I've lived a long life. I don't know. I don't have answers to that, but it's like, when is enough? And when are we actually like, this is what I consider health. This is what I consider optimal. Do you guys have thoughts on that? That's something I'm wrestling with.
Well, I think that the number one thing that we can probably all agree on is that longevity, in my opinion, is probably most correlated with how well you can handle stress. Correct. That's my opinion, right? And now going back to the yin and yang, we'll use that example. If there is two different sides, yin is can you
The more like feminine, cooling, darker.
okay, yin is cooling, yang is
More
charging up. So like running, relaxing, yin, yang. You need to exercise both, and exercising both then causes that to grow, right? But I feel as though, in this situation for myself, I definitely exercise the charging up one way more, which is the one that we give in society, give a lot of like credit and props to, right? It's the one that like, you don't see people, giving people high fives for taking a nap, you know what I'm saying? Right. So I'm like, this is like, a lot of times this shrinks, and like, I feel like this one grows really big. So that you go back to like the optimal balance, and like, I'm not afraid to admit that I'm not optimally balanced. I'm definitely not recovering as much as I am keeping up with this, So when you go back to the, like example of why is it that then like people are able to handle stress? Well, stress is that whole orb. It's not just one side, right? So the people that make it to 100 likely are the ones that did both sides, at least to equilibrium for them. Because again, everyone's different. Like, I'm not saying everyone needs to go run 100-milers or marathons or do a ton of jujitsu or whatever it is and build businesses and whatever, right? But if you have an equal yin to yang, right? That makes sense. I don't even know what I just said there, actually.
Yeah, I liked where you were going.
I think it made sense.
I really appreciate your yin and yang reference.
It
makes me happy.
I really wanted to use an envelope for the analogy, not the yin and yang ball, but I just went with it because you were talking about it.
I'm so proud of you.
No, that was good.
That's my thought on it. So I think that, I think for me specifically, I think that it's not possible to grow my stress resilient without like successfully grow it without also growing my ability to work in.
Heard.
Yeah, but also to that point, because I also think of that too, Tim, and like, when you're in Europe and, you're walking around the streets of Paris, and to your point, they're smoking, walking around, just like having the time of their life, going and eating their croissants, maybe having a glass of wine. And like, we've put like such like a stigma on that in the States, and how it's going to cause cancer, how you're going to die. And, I even think about my patients who come in, they've, the people who read their MRI before they've actually like talked to their MD, and just the stress of the results that they see on there, all of a sudden now you are in this like extreme stressed out state for something that might not have even been this horrible thing that your mind has led you to believe. And it's just like the power of the mind. Like if I'm smoking a cigarette or if I have a glass of wine, if I'm thinking that that's going to ruin my run, that's going to ruin my next day, I'm going to get hungover, like whatever those thoughts are, I feel like you're just, 10 times more likely for that thing to actually happen. Whereas if you're just enjoying your life, you're enjoying the people that you're spending time with, to me, that's health, instead of like labeling this is healthy, this is unhealthy. Or, we have the blue zones, and I feel like we've glorified the Mediterranean diet, for example. And now we're figuring out like, okay, maybe people in Minnesota, maybe the Mediterranean diet actually isn't the optimal thing, because we're not growing olives throughout the winter here. We don't have access to saltwater fish, things like that. And it's like, again, it's for each place that we're in, whatever your specific situation is, that is health to you. So me living like somebody in Italy or Paris, I'm going to be a completely different person than that. And yeah, that's where I was thinking.
Back to bioindividuality. Every single human being has their own unique makeup and code. And again, this is just a Tim thing, but I really think it's so dependent on, your inner regulation from what you perceive. And anyway, it's tough though, because I question these things, and then I actually challenged my own hypothesis more so on, I was thinking more so about like diet for a while. This was when I was back at Raw. I don't remember, Jacob, if I ever talked to you while I was doing this, but a couple of years ago, I was like, I'm going to test that it's all in the mind. It's all perception, and it's all in the mind. Doesn't matter what you eat. Doesn't really matter what you do. So I started eating 2 to 3 gas station donuts a day for like 2 weeks. It's not all in the mind. I mean, it caught up to me, and the mind took a hit as well, or maybe my mind just wasn't, where it needed to be yet. But so, yeah, that's where I just keep going with this question is like, man, I don't know if that's a solvable or a question that can be answered, but why, I guess where I'm going with all of this is especially in practice, you see so many people that are like trying to control and force the health by the right remedy, the right supplement, the right routine. And if they don't act in alignment with that, or they don't perceive that they're acting with alignment with what they need to do, that almost puts the nervous system into a deeper, prolonged state of stress than if they just were like, I tried this and it didn't work and I'm still moving forward. I don't know if that makes sense, if I was clear on that, but I don't know. I think there is a lot up here, and regulation of the nervous system and outlook and perspective and mindset. I think that is like higher level that influences everything else, but there's definitely feedback from the physical body into the mind as well.
This makes me want to be sitting around like a bonfire in the Boundary Waters and just having these like
we should go to the Boundary.
I am down. You know what? I've been attempting to get in for like 6 years, and I always go like right up on the edge, and I have a spot up there that I love that's just like right outside. So I haven't actually been in, but I'd love to.
Yeah. Because I mean, talk about the mind. Why is it that in the Boundary Waters, I can drink whiskey all day and be fine? And if I have a glass of wine here, I beat myself up so bad, and I'll like literally be hungover from one glass of wine. Make sense to me. I think actually our whole
Are you hungover if you drink whiskey all day long here?
That's a good point. Maybe the answer is I need to try this. That's a good point. I never do that here.
That's the first variable to control.
I'm talking about like a flask of whiskey that I sip on throughout the day. It's not like I'm actually Maybe it's a little more than that in the first day, but
That would be the first control in your experiment to test.
okay. I'll do it tomorrow. I'll let you know how it goes. I'll drink whiskey all
Or you
day
could go the opposite way. You could drink the same wine in the boundary waters and see what happens.
and see what happens.
I don't know, though. I don't know.
I think it's nature heals everything. It solves all.
I'm just more relaxed. I think when you're in a more relaxed state in general, like,
the mind.
again, like if you're just not revved up all the time, life gets better.
It's a combo of those two, I think. Nature, grounding, less electromagnetic stress, less pollution, away from your structured routine that I got to go. I'm safe. I'm just, and what you're talking about, Jacob, too.
Yeah. I have 2 thoughts left that I would love to ask. Do you mind if I ask? Number 1, to the random person listening out there on the earth right now, if there's one thing that you could get across to them in regards to stress management, life, whatever, if there's like one thing that everyone in the world, this person, whoever, should be doing, and they should change right now, and they'll make the world a better place, could you pick one thing that you think everyone should be doing?
Practice being kinder to yourself. And if you got that whooped, then that's not your answer. But practice being kinder to yourself. So many of us, it's so easy for us to fixate on everything we haven't done, where we aren't yet, where we want to be, what we did that made us look foolish, what we messed up on. And we will amplify that, and we'll circle until we have that fixed. Again, I think the theme for this pod is balance today, right? And it's like, how much are we investing time in that thought process versus proactively focusing in on, I made progress on this. This is where I am now. Self-forgiveness, all that. That would be, if I had one, I think that'd be the one.
I love that.
Was there a second? I think there were 2 questions, weren't there? Was it?
Yeah. The second question is, I want to know how this juice cleanse you did went in the past couple of weeks.
Dude, life-changing. Life-changing.
Yeah. Can you explain it quick, what it was, like at high level, what it was and how you felt and stuff?
Yeah, that's crazy. Like intuitively that dropped into my world this morning. I was like, this is going to come up on the podcast.
I was like, I need to ask him about this because I kept forgetting.
I'm glad you did. No. Okay. So I just finished a 10-day, it's Ayurvedic based. So they're using a lot of herbs and spices that me as a Scandinavian Midwestern boy, very not used to, right? And low inflammatory. It actually is more of a metabolic detox. I didn't realize that at the time. Let me rewind. I'm always a little bit hesitant when I hear like cleanse or like juice cleanse or even like a whole foods detox and things like that. So, I'll admit that I kind of like I've perceived a devaluation to that. And, but I went into it open-minded, and it was 7 days, 3 days of nutrient building. And I geeked out on, the specifics of the types of foods that they're putting in here. And it's actually very methodical, which was really interesting. Nutrient building for 3 days, and then you do 3 days liquids only, and then 1 day of reintroduction of foods. And, as you're eliminating the big 3: sugar, grains, wheat, and dairy. So it's mostly plant-based. There are a lot of plant-based proteins in there with some animal proteins and eggs as well. But no, I've been dealing with chronic headaches for a long time now. I'm only about a month and a half in this window where I'm not having headaches right now. And I've gone through seasons where that goes away, but like leading up to this, full transparency, I was doing whatever I wanted with diet. I had no restrictions on it. And I was getting like 2 raging headaches a week, almost every week, if not 1 a week for like a number of like month and a half. And, I have not even had a blip of a headache since I started that. And I've come out of the program and I've kept the wheat, dairy, gluten, sugar low. Sorry, I'm kind of going down the rabbit hole, but essentially inflammation has been sucked out of my body. I can see the veins in my arms better than I have in a long time. I have cut definition that even when I was training really, really hard and trying to dial in was really hard for me to accomplish. And so that little bit of inflammation that was below the surface of my skin, I believe was inflaming my brain and causing a lot of the headaches too, right? And a couple days in, that started to go out. And then by the end of the cleanse, it was like inflammation gone. Hannah, my wife, is reporting that I'm more engaged at the end of the day. I'm more open to having more conversations. I'm catching myself out in public, just sparking up conversations more with other people. Baseline energy is more sustainable. So yeah, it was a great reminder for me that I was like, man, like really does matter what you are putting in, because that is going to affect everything else. But yeah, shout out to Denise. Denise is the facilitator of this cleanse, and it's all by design, 7 days, she's based out of the kitchen at Extract Juicery on 50th in France in Edina. And yeah, this is a group program. It's great. There, you interact and engage with the group. Every day you go in and you pick up that day's menu or list, drop off your jars and things the next day, pick up. So you don't have to think, it's all prepped, ready to go. And yeah, it was pretty wild because on like, they call the third day of the juice, like juices only, the summit, or the summit where you're like at the top. And I had a really wild, almost out of body experience when I was laying in bed one of those nights. It felt like, first of all, it felt like I was hovering over the bed, and it felt like I was 10 feet tall and my feet were trying to go the opposite direction of my head. And so I was like levitating. It was wild. And I was like, and it lasted for like an hour. I'm like, this is like, what is going on? I don't know what was going on, but I was just in a state where, I don't know, nervous system was firing more than usual and more clarity. But no, it's been absolutely game changing. And now it's actually shifted my perspective again now, where I'm like, a lot of the cravings and impulses I had to pursue, like rich foods. This just hit me the other day. I went into the gas station before work the other day, and like, I wasn't even thinking, but like seeing all the other food, it was just like headache food. That's what my thought process started firing, was like headache everywhere I looked. And so I was like, I wasn't even seeing something and like, oh, I wonder what that tastes like, or that might be nice. It immediately was like, that equals headache. And so I'm starting, my perspective is shifting, where I'm like, yeah, I could eat that and pursue it, but I'm not even going to go down that thought process because I've seen this breakthrough. So yeah, it was very profound, very profound. So if anybody watching this is curious, get a hold of me, get a hold of either you guys, plug me in. But it's a super cool setup. Now my mind is spinning too, of like, how can things like this be integrated into client care as well? Right. Because again, my job is to like split hairs and go like super focused cellular level, find the specifics. That oftentimes I will refer out for coaching or dietary work, things like that. It's like, no, this is a system, and that I feel like, man, everybody can do a reset like that. And for some people, it's going to be life changing. Other people, it'll be kind of like, eh.
We should do one of those sometime. I always have the drawback that because of how much I'm running, I don't want to F around with a detox because calorie reasons. But that may also be just a thing I'm telling myself potentially.
Yeah, I'm not a runner, so not one to talk, but I mean, I do have to pump the electrolytes and minerals a little bit. I just played in a basketball tournament this last weekend, and I had the wildest, this is kind of off subject, but I had the wildest cramp in my life. It was right here under my jaw, where the muscle goes up and into the bottom of your jaw. I was like stretching and yawning after my third game, and that spasm, dude, that was like the most intense cramp I've ever had. So anyway, cramping. So I don't know. I can't throw that recommendation out there to do that.
I don't think I would do, mid training, do a fast, any fast or any detox or anything like that. Personally, I would not recommend that, but I'm also.
But the questions I always have for runners and things too is like, where is the give and take? Like the macronutrients, the minerals, everything like that. But it's like, what happens if your liver is more efficient? What happens if your cell energy and your mitochondria are more efficient? It's like, I don't know. I don't have answers to that, but I'm always curious about that, because it's like, could that offset and actually feel more efficiency in the utilization of the calories you do have?
Yeah, it's an interesting.
Yeah, and even slowing down with protein for a little bit and not overloading like the kidneys and liver much.
It's an interesting question, because
yeah,
I definitely ask myself that sometimes, because I'll be, even like today, I woke up and my body was just like a little puffy and inflamed. Like I was putting my shoes on and I was like, why are my shoes tighter? And I didn't really do anything that much different yesterday. Had some chips at night. Maybe that was why, but I think sometimes it's just like solely, the amount that I have to eat and drink in like in the day. I think sometimes my body, like, even though I'm like training and I'm utilizing the calories and energy, I do think sometimes my body's like, dog, can you just like not move for a day and give us a break? I do feel like, but I'm getting better at like recognizing when my body's like asking for that and like slowing it down and just like, again, because it's like, just because I'm utilizing it and it's good to be utilizing it potentially, right? It doesn't mean that my digestion tract doesn't sometimes want to break from having to just work so hard from just more calories, and also like while I'm running, taking in food while I'm running too and things like that.
Big stressor.
Yeah, it's just it's a really, man, there are so many things I could talk with you about, like even just like the Mark Dowdle winning the VPN Ultra. I'm sure, do you know who that is?
Yep.
Did you follow him?
I follow him. I don't know him personally.
Well, he went 306 miles and just over 3 days, maybe it was 304 miles, whatever. It's just over 3 days. And it's a continuous loop every hour. You do 4.2 miles at the top of every hour. You have to be back to the start line every hour. And like, just like even that, like, what is that doing to the body? Like the mind, like, he looked like fresh at 300 miles. He was doing, you know what I mean? It's like, is it the mind? Is it the body? It's all of it, right? But it's just like, even in those settings, it's like, man, the body is insane. Like biohacking and doing different things for like performance, since that's what we do a lot of, is really, really interesting and cool. But what about just like daily life too? And like what we don't know yet about the body, even 10 years from now, 20 years, it's going to be really cool to see where you go, where the world of health and wellness goes, because we're doing things now that even 2 years ago, like, wasn't supposed to be humanly possible. You know what I mean? The
Absolutely.
dude just went 300 miles. I mean, and the record's 500. That's still 200 miles less than the record. Someone made it 5 days doing that. You know,
That's
it's
insane.
wild. And like you're literally like digesting food the whole time. You no, nothing gets a break, right? You work in micro naps and things, like you're just like on overdrive. Just go, go, go. And at the same time then can trick it to fall asleep for 5 minutes and like flip the switch, but
That's
yeah, it's weird.
so wild.
I think that's along the lines of the more we learn, the less we know.
Yeah. It's not the truth.
100%.
Tim, this has been awesome.
Thank you guys.
We always end our episodes with asking our guests what your we get to do this moment is. This can be at any time in your life, a moment when you're like, wow, I get to do this.
Yeah, I would have to say that moment, are we talking like very specific moment?
Anything.
We get to do this moment is every Monday afternoon and Wednesday morning when I'm home with my 2-year-old, and I have that realization like, hey, we're out grocery shopping or we're playing at the park and it is 1:30 p.m. on a Monday and I get to do this. I get to be home with my girl while so many people are off at work.
Mhm.
Yeah.
I love that.
We say that to each other every Wednesday morning. Every Wednesday morning we're like, damn, we're at Whole Foods right now, grocery shopping at 9:30. And
Isn't that
like
great?
didn't have to like, keep scrolling somehow on the computer to like fake that
Log
I was
hours.
logged in, you
Yeah.
know? And like this is our job, like talking to cool people.
Yeah. We didn't even get it deep into business and entrepreneurship, which is
Yeah.
fine, but that's a
I
whole
wanted
nother.
to also talk to you about being a dad and your new adventure on, and congrats. Your second
Thank
is
you.
due.
4th of July.
Yeah.
Mhm.
Yep.
So yeah, dude, it's awesome being connected with you. I hope we continue to stay super connected in some way. Whether that's coffee chats or if you need anything from us.
Appreciate it.
Otherwise, yeah, we'll have to get you on the pod again at some point and talk about other things too, because this was one of those where I'm like, what the hell just happened? And then as time flew by. So thank you. Where can people find you and keep up with you?
Yeah, definitely can follow me on Instagram, Axon_movement, AXON_movement, the word MOVEMENT, or on the web, Axon lifeWhat-movement.
Perfect.
Awesome. Thanks, dude.
Thanks for being here, Tim.
Cool, guys. Thanks so much. Yeah, let's connect outside of here.
Thanks for listening, everyone. Bye.
Thank you. Appreciate it.
Wow, Kaylee, we made it through another episode. What do you think?
We would love if you would go give us a follow, a 5-star review, and comment on the episode and what you liked and what you'd like to see more of.
See you next time.
We get to do this.